What's up, everyone? Mike here from tastylive, and we're coming at you with another episode of Options in Action. If you've missed this series, it's basically a new series where I take an old whiteboard concept or maybe a strategy that I talked about previously and bring it into an advanced light. We take a look at the platform and we talk through the practical application of some of these concepts. We're going to go through the entire YouTube playlist, the old whiteboard series. So we have talked about call options, put options. We've talked about premium. We've talked about strike prices and expirations, you name it. And today we're talking about the age-old question. Can you make more money trading short premium, or can you make more money trading long premium? And what are the gimmies and gotchas, as Dr. Jim says? What are the trade-offs with selling premium versus buying premium? We're going to take a look today, and we'll break it down on this edition of Options in Action. So we got this SPX chart pulled up here, and this is not the SPX stock or index chart. It is actually a chart of a long call out in December, the 8,300 strike to be specific. You can see here SPX at the top is trading at 7,300. So we're looking at this call option 1,000 points out of the money to the upside. And this is the December cycle. So before we dive into this and before I start spewing nonsense, I just wanted to say, when you're selling premium, there's a difference between selling premium in the S&P 500 products like SPX or MES or XSP or SPY. There's a big difference between selling premium in those sorts of products versus selling premium in the equity space, right? S&P 500 or other indices, even products like SMH that have moved quite aggressively with the tech sector popping off and selling off at the same time, there's things to consider, right? Short premium in the S&P 500, I've said this before, I think if you can trade successfully short premium on both sides of a market in an equity, you can definitely do that in the S&P 500 simply because the S&P 500 moves less. It doesn't have the same binary events. It doesn't have the same binary nature of equities. You could have a CEO step down and the stock price be down 20% pre-market or after the market closes, or the opposite can happen. They can announce something that the market likes, and that stock is up or down 20% when the options market is closed. It's not necessarily going to happen in the S&P 500. There's also market stops. Even if there is a big crash in the S&P, there's certain levels where the market stops trading. That doesn't necessarily help you in the case of not taking on risk when it comes to short premium. If we're talking like short puts, for example, into a market move like this, or even strangles. But what I will say is over the years, I've learned that there's a time and place for all strategies, right? I have long premium strategies where I'm buying options. It's a lower probability trade if you're holding trades to expiration. But I like to say if you're buying options, you get what you pay for. I don't really buy options that are near term. I don't buy 0-day options. I don't buy 7-day options. In my mind, you're buying a lot of implied volatility in those cases, and it becomes just that much harder to be profitable on those strategies because you have this super decaying asset that is, if it moves against you directionally, it's basically going to become worthless, and it becomes that much harder for it to reverse and work in your favor. If you're buying a leap option, though, totally different story. Leap options cost a lot of money. You get what you pay for when it comes to long premium. But I think when you're buying premium, it doesn't necessarily have to be a naked option. It can be. I actually have a position on in Nike right now. I bought a leap option out at the 60 strike all the way out almost 600 days away, January of 2028. So this was a situation where, Nike drops to multi-year lows. We're talking decade lows. This Nike hasn't been 45, at least around this price point, since 2015, if I'm not mistaken. So the further a price falls, especially in a product like Nike, where I think we'll still see some upside potential there, yes, I could sell a put to collect that premium. But at the same time, Nike's already fallen, and it's still down at 40. if I sell a put 16 days away for $100, sure, I could sell that. It's a higher probability trade. You can see my probability of profit is nice and high at 66%. But I take on the undefined risk nature of Nike, where maybe they announce something, the stock's not down another 10 points, and now all of a sudden I have a $900 loss on my hands and not much management in terms of what I can do. It also takes a decent amount of buying power, $800 relative to a $40 stock. So for me, instead of selling a put, especially when a product like Nike or any other equity gets to multi-year lows or decade lows, I'd rather just inventory some long-term premium. And you can see here, the further out in time you go, because you're avoiding the implied volatility increase of something like an earnings announcement, something I mentioned earlier, you've got plenty of implied volatility here in the near-term cycles that isn't necessarily reflective of these long-term cycles, right? Look at this expected move for June 30th. You have a plus minus $4.60 implied move with a 60% IV almost, but you look at January of 2028 and it's only a 17-point implied move, and that's because the implied volatility is significantly lower when you get all the way out here on the curve. So will I be trading Nike? Will I be selling premium in Nike around the earnings announcement in a defined risk way? Absolutely. Like I said, there's a time and place for everything. I think for Nike with the upcoming earnings, I'll probably sell something in this 22-day cycle, but I'm going to buy something in July or August. I likely will go to something like a diagonal spread or calendar spread in that sense, because I still want to trade intelligently. I still want to reduce cost basis, which has always been something that we've said here on tastylive. I want to make sure that I am reducing my cost basis and improving my probability of success anywhere I can. So in this case, if Nike's offering super high premium to sell something against even a long option I'm buying, whether it be a calendar spread or diagonal spread, we can look at this here, like the 45 strike in July, trading for $2.50, we'll call it. The 45 strike in July 2nd, look at that. You have 2 weeks of a difference in time, but only a 40-cent difference in the option prices. I'm absolutely going to be selling something against that long option that I buy if I'm bullish, and same thing if I'm bearish. But longer term, Nike's down to 10-year lows. So what does that mean? It means I'm going to get really far out on the curve here and risk $500. This option hasn't really moved all that much, which is interesting. Nike's still chopped around, and this 2-year leap basically is trading for $500. My whole thesis is, would I be surprised to see Nike go from 45 back up to 50 or 55 or 60? It was just there a couple months ago. So my answer is no, I would not be surprised. And if I'm buying a leap option that has much lower implied volatility, I know, yes, it's a little bit more costly, but I'm out of the IV spike in the near term. I'm inventorying long-term delta, inventorying premium that isn't going to decay against me all that much. And if we get a move in Nike from 45 to 50 or 55 or 60, that option is going to be worth $1,000, $1,500. And we can see this here. If I right click on the option in the chart, the 60 strike, if you right click on the bid or ask, you can have this menu pop up here. View the option in the chart, and here we go. It's been trading for $500 basically ever since I bought it. But back here, when Nike was at 55 and 60, this option was trading for $1,500. So from a risk reward standpoint, as a product like Nike or any other equity gets to decade lows or multi-year lows, I'm going to be inclined to lean into the long-term positioning. I did the same thing in Microsoft, right? Microsoft went from 550 down to sub 400 levels. What did I do? I was buying into some near-term stuff. We set up some short premium trades, of course, but I also did a really long-term calendar spread at the 500 strike. I bought January of 2027 and sold September of this year, and that was like a $500 trade. I was just like, well, I don't know what's going to happen in the near term, but I do feel like over the course of the year, Microsoft's going to be higher than where it is now. And that ended up being the case. We saw a nice bid, got all the way up to 460. And just looking at the order chains here, you can see I've had some decent trades up until that point. And the only trade I have left is that calendar spread in Microsoft. And it's up a couple $100 right now. If we look at the 500 strike, I bought it for $500. It's up $400 right now. So I still want to have it on. I think there's a bullish case for it. But to answer the question, selling premium versus long premium, I think when you're selling premium, you have to be able to withstand all variance within that product you're selling, right? Because from my perspective, the most success that I've had in products where I've sold premium, it's been in products where I've traded small enough or the product size was small enough to where I could manipulate the strikes, manipulate my time and expiration, or a combination of both, right? That's the beauty of undefined risk. You have the flexibility to be like, you know what? I'm done with this strike. I'm done with this expiration. I'm going to buy this back and I'm going to move it out a month. I'm going to move it out 2 months and move my strike and collect a credit still. So that is how I approach undefined risk these days. It's going to be a much higher probability of success naturally, because when you're selling premium versus buying premium, if you sell an option, you just need the stock price to stay out of the money, or in this case, above your 37.5 put. If you're buying premium, you need a directional move in the stock price, and that's as simple as that. So when you think about that, if I'm selling premium and I just need my strike to be out of the money, I'm going to be much more inclined to sell near-term premium because I know that implied volatility is higher. There's not enough time, or there's not as much time for the product to move against me in a big way. It can still happen, of course, but that 30 to 60-day window is where the implied volatility is nice and high relative to a nice blend of time value as well. So that's why we are selling premium in that window. We have research that shows that that's kind of the sweet spot of implied volatility value plus time value. So selling premium in that 30 to 60-day window. Buying premium, I prefer to be outside of that 60-day window. Honestly, I would rather buy premium in a 90-day, 100-day option cycle if it's something I can afford. In the case of Nike, I can do that in a 25K, 30K account, of course. Even smaller, you have the ability to do it because the stock price is so low. But in something like SPX, $7,300 stock price, I don't have the ability to sell premium in here. I can trade spreads in here. I can do calendar spreads, some diagonal spreads in here, but sometimes the stock price is the determining factor of your strategy. So keep all this in mind and just really make sure if you're selling premium, you need to be able to withstand the variance of any kind of move. I prefer to, if I'm selling a put or a strangle, let's talk about puts. If I'm selling a put, I would rather sell it in a product where I can just hold that premium or take the shares. I would rather not exit at 2 or 3 times the loss of that short put, because if I'm selling an undefined risk put, I kind of want to have that bullish delta anyways if it does get down there. I don't want to be stopping myself out and then 2 weeks later see that it could have moved out of the money. So that's just me. But to summarize, if you're buying options, you get what you pay for. I think in this kind of market environment, I'm always going to have something against it. Like if I'm buying a 60-day option, I want to be selling something in the 30-day cycle or maybe the weekly cycle against it. If there's an earnings announcement where that premium is really juicy and I can reduce the cost basis on my long option, because the more you can reduce the cost basis on your long option, the more flexibility you have going forward to have that long option be profitable or even a scratch. If I'm selling premium, I'm very cognizant of the fact that it is a higher probability trade. You're going to have a lot of winners when you're selling premium, but you should also understand how to manipulate that trade. With defined risk debit trades, when you're buying premium, there's not a lot of things you can do. There are certain things like with calendar spreads and diagonal spreads where you can manipulate that short option by moving the strike or moving it out in time. But with short premium, undefined risk short premium specifically, you can do a lot of different things. You have a ton of flexibility in the ability to manipulate strikes. And if you look at my order chains for the MES position, this is my year-long strategy for 2026. I've clearly manipulated this position over and over and over. And every single time I do it, I collect more credit. I started with 93 points in credit. I now have 700 points in credit overall, which means my break-evens are 700 points beyond my strikes. And this is a profitable trade because I've been selling premium to offset any kind of intrinsic value losses that might show against me. So short premium, I like to reserve it for either products that I can afford any variance in, or something in like an index, like MES is a great example, or IBIT even, the Bitcoin ETF. That was my year-long trade from last year. So I think when you compartmentalize these things, it puts you in a good spot to be able to withstand variance. And again, if you have a day like today and you're like, my account is really suffering, then I think your trade size might be off. I think maybe the strategic decisions might be a little bit off. Again, we want to be able to withstand as much variance as possible. With undefined risk, I think it's got to be any variance. The trade size has to be small enough to where you can withstand any variance. It just sets you up for success in the future, and it gives you that flexibility to manipulate the trade as the markets move. And with defined risk, same story. I like to keep them within $500 to $1,000. I think that's a healthy level for me. But again, if I'm doing a diagonal spread or calendar spread, I have a plan for if things go wrong. I know I can move that short strike out in time. I know I can move that short strike up or down depending on the strategy. But yeah, let me know what you think in the comments below. That was a long-winded segment. Wasn't expecting to go that long, but hopefully that kind of mental shift helps a little bit. Again, if I'm selling undefined risk premium, it's usually in an index product or a micro futures product, and it's sector based. It's not something that's going to move 20% pre or post market. But if I am involving myself in those types of products, it's going to be in a product size that is small enough to where I can withstand any variance. I can manipulate the strikes up and down. And I think that's another interesting and important point is undefined risk trading, super high probability if you're doing out of the money sales of options, but understand what you can do to manipulate that risk profile. And that's just going to give you another leg up in the future of trading as the markets move and things go wrong for you. I mean, you're going to have your winners, you're going to have your losers, but you got to know how to manipulate and adjust those losers if they are undefined risk trades. But thanks for tuning in. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Please like this video, subscribe to the tastylive channel, and we'll see you on the next episode of Options in Action.